I must have that new Sega Power Rangers game! Goldar, steal it for me!
Alpha, a remake has been made. Recruit 2 gamers to talk about 90s nostalgia. In 1995, kids geared up as they watched the trailer for Power Rangers the movie.
Where's my autograph book?
Hey, it's Timmy and Joe here, talking about Power Rangers the movie, the game.
I remember both of us being in the theater to see this movie and being really excited. Recently, we saw the reboot. To me, it felt like a 2-hour version of the TV show, as if it was Dragon Ball Z or something.
I remember when I was a kid, we watched that trailer and were so excited. But what did it bring us? It brought us 4 games, 4 very distinctly different games. All full of action, all full of fun, and we are going to go through each one. So sit back and enjoy Power Rangers, the movie, the game. So let's start with the Game Boy edition.
This game has 6 stages. The first 5 can be played in any order. Don't worry about lining up the bosses like in Mega Man. There isn't a rock, paper, scissors mechanic. This game jumps right into the action. Screw story arc. We came here to kick ass and eat takeout. It leaves out the first half of the movie entirely. This is the only game where the Rangers fight in their ninja outfits, and they do it right from the get-go.
Next up is the Game Gear Edition. The Game Gear Edition is regarded as one of the best of these games. There's a lot of players out there that really prefer this. The Game Gear Edition is a follow-up to the regular Power Rangers game, which is a half beat-em-up, half Street Fighter style game. So you start out as your Ranger, you'll fight a bunch of putties, kind of coming in each one as its own little individual screen and Street Fighter style battle, and then you'll fight each one of those, and then the monster will come. As we can see here, like Goldar, there's a lot of beautiful cut screens in this, and you get to play as the Megazord. The Megazord is lacking in a bunch of these games, and we're going to get to that, but this one, the Megazord's here, it's in full power. There is some filler battles that didn't happen in the movie, but we do have to allow those to be there because the movie is a 90-minute movie with one villain, and to be honest with you, it's just a very, very long episode of Power Rangers, so you gotta throw some other monsters in there to make it that way. As you can see, the Megazord acts a little differently than what the Rangers do. They each have their own separate things of attacks, and later on in the game you get to fight as the Ninja Megazord, but right now they're fighting as the Shogun Megazord, and you're just fighting Goldar, which, like I said, it's a really fun game. It's a little challenging, but definitely one of the better ports of this game. Next up, we have the Super Nintendo version. I'm going to spend a little bit more time on this one, because this was a game that I played probably the most along with the Sega version. They're a little bit more in-depth, slightly less wash, rinse, and repeat of the other 2 games, where it's just monster battle, Zord battle, keep going. First up, you get to select one of your players, and just like the movie, all 6 Rangers are there. Each stage you get to select your character, which is kind of a cool feature. So if you want to play as different Rangers for different stages, sometimes the weapons and things will have an advantage towards whatever stage you're playing. So as you move along, you fight a bunch of putties and you collect lightning bolts. And once you collect enough of those, boom, you get to turn into a Power Ranger. You can do this mid-stage, you can save it up. Once you get to the final battle and you have to fight the boss, it will automatically transfer your Ranger power to you. But as you collect these also with your Ranger, your weapon will start charging. So once you collect enough of these, you're going to use Billy's lance or the power bow. The power bow is a great long-range weapon, but for the most part, it's generic street of any other beat 'em up on this. And hey, who do you get to fight? Mirror Man is your first villain, the Mirror Maniac. He was one of the villains in Season 2. That's one of the things that you end up seeing a lot in this game is all of the bosses are from Season 2 of the show and really very little to do with the movie. Stage 2, you start on an aircraft carrier because apparently Angel Grove does have a military. They just never deploy them when there's giant monster battles going on. Well, hey, they have the Power Rangers, so I guess that's what they're for. But I do remember this. I personally like this stage a little bit more in Turtles 3 when they did this exact same thing and they were on an aircraft carrier as well. But hey, Nintendo likes to recycle a bunch of game stages. And for beat 'em ups, you kind of do lose variety after a while. But for the most part, each character gets their own moves, which is a lot of fun in this game. This one, unlike the first one, you could play as 2 players. 2 players was a huge advantage in this game. The original Super Nintendo Power Rangers, which this game is, let's just call this Power Rangers 2. Very much just a follow-up to that first one. But this one, they added that morphing mid-stage, and you have each ranger has their own individual powers and things. They did do the whole sprite recycling that you're going to see. The Yellow Ranger turns into a beefed up version of, you know, just a Red Ranger repainted. But the bosses in it are relatively distinct. There's some tricks to beating them. Of course, there's going to be a snowboarding stage for Stage 3 because it's the 90s and you can't get away without having a surfing stage in your game. This is very much, to me, reminds me of those early Turtles beat 'em ups where you have the skateboarding stages and you have snow levels and airport levels, and it's kind of the same game. But they're really fun to play. I'm always a fan of beat 'em ups, as long as you get a little bit of variety, which you do in this game. It does have a great 2-player mode. And like I said, this is one thing that I think these games kind of have on it is you get to choose your ranger for each stage.
Wait a second. White Ranger? Snowboards don't work on water.
Like I said, it's a 90-minute movie. You're not going to get a ton of different villains and things like that. So you do have to use some other things. This is very much, like I said, just a follow-up to that whole first Power Rangers game. That's how the Super Nintendo one feels. It doesn't feel like the movie. It feels a lot more just like a follow-up game with a couple new features, and you get to play as the White Ranger. In the original one, you never got to play as the Green Ranger. You did get to play with the Zords at the end of the game, which is very, very fun. So as you can see now, this is our color swap Red Ranger. I'm not going to point too much out at the color swaps. It was a thing that they did in the 90s. I understand it. It's a cheaper way to go. But here's your train level. Much like Turtles 4 in Time, there is also a train level in this as well. You know, they're fun. It's a fun game. Here you fight Magnet Brain on the train level, another villain from Season 2. Like I said, that's where they did it, because they really wanted to tie this game into Season 2 of the show. And with them all being very distinctly different games, you got very distinct different villains and things in there, and a different story for the most part. Silverhorn is the battle in here. Now we're kind of getting close to the end. We just went through a generic factory. This is now the Pink Ranger, not the Red Ranger. It's that whole color swap thing, but hey, let's just reuse the Red Ranger again. Silverhorn. Now we're in Angel Grove's rocket factory, because why wouldn't Angel Grove have a giant rocket factory? We know that they're very industrial, and personally I always thought that the Power Rangers fought in the abandoned building district and there was never actually any moving things, and I hoped that people would never die. But the villain in this is Mainframe, which is just, you know, hey, Mother Brain from Metroid. That's really what you're fighting. You're just fighting the Metroid villain in here. I was very unimpressed with this villain for being so close to the end. It should be a lot harder. It just has a couple flying objects, and as you can see, just acts the shit out of it. And And finally, we make it to the title character, Ivan Ooze. He is the final boss in the game, and when you beat him, the game is finally over, right? Wrong. After you beat Ivan Ooze, you have to escape his palace, and what do you get? You get a giant clock time rush race for this one. You have to escape now. In, 99.99 seconds. But, I always like these. It's kind of that race to the end. It's a fun little thing. You have to fight putties along the way. It's actually kind of challenging. This game, in general, is a pretty tough game. It took me a long time to get through this one. Even as a kid, I remember it took quite a while for me to actually beat it. And then at the end, you get to fight as the Megazord. No, you don't. But there is a cool cutscene with the Megazord ominously looking over a smoking volcano? Sure, because that's where Ivan Ooze's thing was. But hey, at least they tried to throw in the Megazord as an afterthought. And the Rangers actually have different sprites that are all designed. Hey, good job. You're almost done. And finally, for a wrap-up, it ends on a little cutscene with Tommy and Rocky fighting and fades off just like the old Rocky 3 movie with all of the staff and everything going. Next up, the Sega Genesis version. This is probably the one that follows the movie the most. It starts off, a long time far away, blah, blah, blah. Zordon created the Power Rangers, and we're going to start this movie, the game. The movie itself starts pretty much the exact same way. The sprites on this game look way better. You actually have distinctive Rangers. This game is a lot like Streets of Rage 2, which Joe and Matt just did a full live playthrough with, if you want to check that out to see some comparisons. Here we are fighting the Ooze Men, which are Ivan Ooze's henchmen. But for the most part, this game is pretty solid. It's going to be a short game, but this one, of all of them, follows the movie the most. It partly does that to its own fault. It's, like I said, a short movie. There's only one villain. It's kind of a long episode. If you were to make an entire game out of one episode, this is what it's going to look like. Ivan Ooze shows up, blasts the shit out of you, and what do we get after that? Another cutscene. Ivan Ooze comes in and destroys the command center, and the Power Rangers are forced to go to the distant planet of Australia.
And Lord Zed and Rita get encased in a snow globe. We meet Dulcia, who helps them find their spirit animals.
The Rangers are all granted with the mystical power of the Ninjetti, while back on Earth, the Ectomorphican Titans are revealed. With their newfound ninja powers, the Power Rangers are sent back to Earth for the final battle with Ivan Ooze, and the power is on. Now that the power has been turned on, you get to fight on the street again in your Ranger mode. As you can see, it's now dark. It's kind of very similar to the first level, just repeated. After you get through this level, we get the big reveal of the Ectomorphicons, Hornitor and Scorpitron. Which means we get to strap in, kids, because it's Megazord time. Fun. You get about halfway through the game, you now get to play as either the Ninja Megazord or you can play as the Falcon Zord. I always happen to like playing as the Falcon Zord because flying around is, fun. So more cutscene of whatever Zord you choose flying in, and now we get to have somewhat of a Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter battle of Lord Zed's monsters versus your Zord. Both monsters are present in here, and you have to beat them both. Once you're able to defeat them both, there's going to be the end of the game. No, another cutscene. Now it's, hey, remember that time that we went in the show and Lord Zed and Rita kidnapped Adam, Rocky, and Aisha? Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's going to do a little recap of the show because this game would have been incredibly short if we only did the movie stuff. One villain, only a couple of Zord battles. So about halfway through, they did this somewhat ingenious thing of, let's bring the show into the game, and we're gonna have it make sense. We're gonna make Tommy, who once was the Green Ranger, the Zord powers faded, let's make him the White Ranger, and now we get some new stages. And it's gonna follow the whole bringing of Rocky, Adam, and Aisha into the thing, so now we get to play as Jason for the first time. I always like to play as Tommy because, you know, why the hell not? He's the coolest character in the game for a reason. But now we get to see some of Lord Zedd's buddies and a couple different levels. These levels are a little bit more unique than the Super Nintendo generic backgrounds. They have some foreground stuff, which I always thought Sega did a really good job at, of bringing a lot of things into the foreground of these beat-em-up style games. It makes the gameplay a little bit tougher. For the most part, this is a very, very easy game, though. You can get through it in, if you're rushing, under an hour.
Here we have the Scarlet Sentinels from Season 2, known as Ring, Neck, and Ear in the game. They were Nimrod, AC, and DC on the show.
After that, more cutscenes. Lord Zedd uses his signature bomb to make his monster grow. And you get to now play as a Zord again. So the Zords handle a little clunky, but they're a lot of fun to play as. You get some different moves for them, and you get to battle all of the monsters in both Ranger mode and Zord mode, just like the show. After you beat them, there's another cutscene that shows Rocky, Adam, and Aisha being trapped in the cave, just like the episode of the show that they're referencing. So now it sets up the premise that they have to get the sword in order to transfer their powers from one ranger to the next. So they're going to start traveling to this distant planet to collect this sword. So we're jumping into a cave battle. The cave battle is kind of fun. Like I said, we are Jason now. You're always collecting these little power coins. Those power coins will help increase your life. They will give you an extra life. They will give you some extra credits as well. So if you need to continue the game after you have died, that's what those are for. Each coin will do different things. If you get the one that's your ranger, that will give you the most power up of the entire thing. But once your power is full, which is all blue, then you will just get extra credits and things to try and build up your score. So you do get to fight Goldar in this game. He's a flying guy, which I am the worst at, because flying guys seem to be the bane of my existence, but it still looks really good. Those Sega graphics make this thing look great. One other perk that I really like about this game is if you notice the life bar of the Red Ranger or the life bar of the villains, it's one continuous life bar. So there's not the you get knocked down and now you fade into something. It's you have one continuous life bar. It goes from blue to yellow to red to black. But having that one long continuous life bar, it makes the gameplay a lot more fluid. Now we are playing as the Thunder Megazord, whooping the shit out of Goldar, because this game gets a lot of variety with character. That's one huge advantage for it. Now Jason, Zach, and Trainee have all been invited to go to the conference, and we need to collect that sword on the distant planet, and it's just lining it up for that episode. Once you obtain the sword to transfer the powers are now transferred to Rocky, Adam, and Aisha. And look, they are now Power Rangers and back in the movie. That was a great flashback, wasn't it, guys? Now let's go kick some ooze. Just like in the movie.
Ivan Ooze then merges with his Ectomorphicon to become Ivan Hornator.
And what do you get to do now? You now get to choose your Megazord to fight this massive Ivan Ooze character. So you get the Ninja Megazord, your new Megazord to fight the Ivan Ooze Ectomorphicon. Once you defeat Ooze on Earth, there's going to be yet another cutscene where you fly into space. Don't let them escape. Yet again, done all with cutscenes. Kind of fun to relive the movie like that. In the movie, they come together. The Falcon Zord attaches onto the back of the Megazord,
Making the Ninja Falcon Megazord.
so that way we have another toy to sell to children, and they fly up into space and kick them in the junk. Here they fly up and now fight them on the moon. So you get to fight the Ivan Ooze Ectomorphicon once more. So the reason why the Falcon Zord is not on the Megazord in this one is because this is a two-player game. So if you had a second player, one could fight as the Falcon Zord, one could fight as the Megazord. Once you defeat Ivan Ooze, you get one main final cutscene where they throw him into the comet. In the movie, they do it yet again by kneeing him in the junk as their emergency giant red button that you should never hit. In case of emergency, you have robot with junk kicking action. And thanks to the Power Rangers, Angel Grove and the world have been spared from the villainy of Ivan Ooze, and we get this nice little Balkan skull cameo. So they made it into this game with some very weird likenesses, but hey, it's the 90s, it is Sega Genesis. That's actually not too bad of graphics for the whole thing. Overall, this game is one of my favorites. It's a very short game, as I mentioned before, and you can play it in probably about an hour. There is a ton of cutscenes, but you're not stuck watching all of them. You can skip past all of them, which makes the gameplay even shorter. But overall, the controls are very fluid. The sprites look great. The levels are very distinctly different. It's just a very short game because they tried to follow the movie.
That's it for us.
Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and we will see you all next time bringing you the game reviews from Retro Takeout.
Huh?